Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, part 2, simplified. Giving honor and praise to the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 6 says, I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 20 says, But you hath the Lord taken and brought forth out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 51. And it says as follows, For they are thy people and thine inheritance, which thou bringest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron. So the point in going over this, brothers and sisters, is to let it be known that when the Most High spoke about Egypt, when he gave the commandments, he described it as the house of bondage. When Israel was being brought forth out of Egypt, the prophet Moses in Deuteronomy 4 describes it as the iron furnace. Years later, Solomon described Egypt also as the iron furnace. So we have to begin to know and understand that when we are seeing the Hebrew understanding of Mizraim or Mazarayim, we're speaking about double distress, the house of bondage, the iron furnace. That is the point in going over those scriptures right there, so that way it be let it known and understood. Now, brothers and sisters, I like to go into a book I have here entitled The Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon, right? And on page 651, in this particular book, we're going to look up the word zarar and the Hebrew word zar, so we can gain an understanding, yet nonetheless, from the Hebrew aspect. Now, here's what we see. Zar means in the masculine, or as well as in the feminine, zara, narrow, straight, adversary, distress, adversity, flint, enemy. So let that be noted and understood what the scriptures is talking about when the issue of zar and zarim. Okay, now when you conjugate in this under the verb zarar, as we see in Leviticus 18, in one case it says to tie or bind up, to shut up, to be hostile to, zorer, adversary, hatzir, distress in pains, pangs, to vex or to straighten or distress. So this right here, brothers and sisters, from the Hebrew mindset, is very, very important to let it be known and understood. This is why I'm going over this particular aspect very meticulously. All right, so let it be noted and understood. I like to go into another reference, if we will. I have a book here entitled The English Hebrew English Dictionary, the Ben Yehuda version. And a lot of people use this for a reference. I want to go to the Hebrew side on page 261. And we're going to sit there and see what the definition has for the Hebrew word zar and zarim. Zar, from the root word zur, an iron wild verb for those familiar with that. To besiege, to bind, or to wrap up, to form. Zar, zarim, adversary or distress. Now, this word zarim, I want people to pay attention to as we go along in this presentation. Very, very important. Zar, zarim. The plural of zar is zarim. The singular of zarim is zar. We went over in the Hebrew lexicon that the word zar means adversary, enemy. So let that be noted and understood. Brothers and sisters, let's go, if you will, to Jeremiah in the Hebrew scriptures. Jeremiah chapter 21, verses 3 and verse 4. And for those familiar, this is speaking about the situation that happened between the southern kingdom of Judah and the situation that happened between them and the Babylonians. Now, this is speaking about Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. In history, he was the son of Nabopolassar. and he set forth the 11th dynasty of Babylon, which is when the Chaldeans were ruling in Babylon. Now, for those who want to say that Deuteronomy 28 verse 16, Deuteronomy 28 verses 48 to verse 68 is speaking about solely the Israelites and the Romans, they have a difficult time because the Babylonians besieged the children of Israel, as you see in the book of 2 Kings chapter 24. So when it says they shall besiege thee in all thy gates till thy high and fortified walls come down, you can't try to pinpoint that to the Roman Empire solely, because that happened with the Greeks under Antiochus, that happened under the situation with the Babylonians, and that happened, as we shown in part 1, with the Israelites and the Assyrians prior to the Babylonians becoming an empire. So that's very important to let that be noted and understood. Now, timeline wise, we're speaking about the southern kingdom of Judah falling. This being in between the years 597 and 586 BCE, which is the 6th century BCE. Rome came up as an empire, brothers and sisters, in the year 27 BCE under Augustus. So we're talking a span of over 500 years between the era of Jeremiah seeing Jerusalem fallen and the era of the Roman Empire. Very important to let that be noted and understood. The timeline in between that, brothers and sisters, you had it to where Babylon came up as stated. They fell in the year 538 to Cyrus, the king of Persia. The Persians come up as an empire. In 538, they fell when Darius III lost to Alexander in the Battle of Gaugamela in the year 331. Then the Greeks come up as an empire under Alexander. He died in the year 323 BCE, but the Greeks as an empire still flourished until the year 146 BCE under the era of what happened between the Seleucids, the Ptolemies, and the line of what happened with Lysimachus and the people of Casandus that was ruling over in the Greek states. So let that be noted and known in history. So now when the Romans come up as an empire, they defeated in the Battle of Corinth the guy Perseus of the Greeks. You understand? In the year 146 BCE. So now Rome comes up as a leadership, but they still under the Roman Republic until the year, as stated, 27 BCE. So now, in between that timeline, you had it to where Rome coming up in 27 BC all the way to the era of 476 AD. That is what they refer to as the Western Roman Empire. Because what happened in the year 285 or 286 AD, a guy named Diocletian and a guy named Maximilian, they had a quarrel between them. So they had it decided to where the Roman Empire split Eastern and Western. Most people, and we're going to follow in the same suit, speak about the issue of the Western Roman Empire and not so much in this presentation about the Eastern Roman Empire, aka the Byzantine Empire, which happened to fall in the year 1453 AD. Okay, now let's get back into this portion here in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 21, verse 3. Then said Jeremiah unto them, Thus ye shall say to Zedekiah, Thus saith Yah, the God of Israel, Behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, wherewith ye fight against the king of Babylon and against the Chaldeans that besiege you without the walls, and I will gather them into the midst of this city. Now, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 21, verse 4, brothers and sisters, and I hope people are able to follow along. This is becoming very, very important concerning the Hebrew mindset in this aspect. All right, and I want to sit there and read this portion here in the Hebrew. It says, Ko, meaning thus. Ko amar Yah. Thus saith the Most High, Elohe Yisrael, Hini, behold me, Meseb et kele hamilkama, Asher beged kem, Asher atem nilkaming bam, et melech babel, we et hakasdim hazarim alekem. You see this word here? That's why I mentioned before hazarim becomes important. Now, those familiar with Hebrew, zarim is the masculine plural present tense. The hey, which has the ah sound underneath it, being called in this particular case a patak, the hey, brothers and sisters, represented, it is the present tense, that which fight upon you, that which fight against you, that which fight concerning you. So let that be noted and understood. Okay, so getting back on, brothers and sisters, the Hebrew word zarim, enemy, adversary, distress, and as we see, besiege is under that same definition. So let that be noted and understood. Brothers and sisters, this Hebrew letter, as we see here, is the Hebrew letter mem, and it is used in many cases also in Hebrew as what we will call, in today's terminology, a prefix. Okay, so let that be noted. In light of that, I'd like to go back, if we will, to the English Hebrew and Hebrew English dictionary, and on page as stated 261, under the Hebrew word zar, here is what we read under this, and it says the following: zar, to besiege, to bind up; zar zarim, adversary or distress. So let that be noted. Now you have it as stand here: zar, zara, zarim, zarot. If you were to put that in, conjugate it in within the present tense. So as we saw in Jeremiah chapter 21 verse 4, hazarim, who besiege, who trouble, who is your enemy concerning you, aleichem. Very important to get into that, because that is the same root word that you get the word zar, adversary, which you get the word matzor, besieged. And the Hebrew word matzor is used in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 53, when you read that in your own time. Similar situation of what happened, brothers and sisters, when you go into Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, when it speaks about Mitzrayim, Metzorayim. Very important within the Hebrew understanding. So, with that, brothers and sisters, I'd like to go, if you will, to the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 1 and verse 2. So we can see, brothers and sisters, a very important issue concerning this kind of matter. All right? It says the following. Now, Isaiah was before Jeremiah, but Israel was doing something that needed to be noted concerning this. It says, "Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Most High, that take counsel but not of me, that form projects but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt." Now, that right there is very important, because we have to then know and understand the mindset of what the Israelites was talking about when they first named that land Mizraim, when you go into the book of Exodus. The straightness, the besiegement, because that was the border where Israel was intended to have in the first place. So let that be noted and understood. If we go, brothers and sisters, into what is referred to, and I like this particular book here, it is entitled the Macmillan Bible Atlas. And I want to go to page 120 in this particular book right here and show something very, very significant concerning this matter. All right? On page 120 in the Macmillan Bible Atlas, we see that the people, this is where the land of Israel will be, as Jerusalem, right? They went and walked into Egypt, as we just saw. Point in that is, there's no way in the world that you're going to need a ship to go from here to take people as captives over into this land here. That's very, very important to let that be noted and understood. Now, brothers and sisters, if we will go for our own time and our own purpose, I have a book here entitled Understanding the Old Testament, right? This was given to me by my teacher who came out of an old Israelite camp called Benaz Zakim. His name, may he rest in peace, is Chief Simeon ben Yehuda. Now on page 400 in this particular book, brothers and sisters, here is what we read concerning this kind of aspect. It says, under the title, The Jewish Dispersion, Egypt came to be one of the major centers of the Jewish dispersion. About 100 years after the migration of Jeremiah and his fellow Jews to Egypt, some of their descendants were settled in the first cataract of the Nile on the island of Elephantine. So let that be noted and understood, that you had Israelites in what is referred to as Elephantine Island by the first cataract of the Nile. That is in what you call Upper Egypt, okay? Because the way the ancient Egyptians viewed it, Upper Egypt is Southern Egypt, and Northern Egypt is Lower Egypt. So let that be noted and understood. Brothers and sisters, I have a book here entitled Atlas of Ancient Egypt. And I want to sit there and show on page 33 where this particular land was that it says that the children of Israel winded up migrating to. And here is where it's at, Elephantine. So they came from the land of Israel and migrated down here to Elephantine. So let that be noted and understood. Part 3 coming up.